Okay, I'm going to kick off, if that's all right. Hello, I'm Chris. Thanks for joining for this session. I know you're here for the next two after me, but it's okay. This is me. I work in DEFRA. I'm a full-time consultant. I work in change and improvement. And I lead on complex challenges and systems thinking. This is my career. In a circle, in a donut. And you can see I started off wearing Wellington boots, the National Rivers Authority. And now I'm in DEFRA, in the centre of the DEFRA group. At the top there, you can see I'm affiliated with two universities. My PhD, I started with the Centre for Systems Studies in Hull, and I've recently moved to the Birmingham Leadership Institute, maintaining supervision from Gerald Midgley, who some of you may know, and having Rachel Lilly as my second supervisor, which is another great asset. As I say, I've won the lottery twice. So, you're seeing a mixture of some old slides and some new slides. This is an old slide. This is about the start, where I was framing the focus of my PhD, how you build and sustain complexity capabilities in public service organisations. So changing government and a mission-driven agenda. So we're in the middle still, we're in this liminal space between an old way of approaching work under new public management, but it's all about targets, control, and through into a mission-driven government, which for me was like, well hey, systems thinking, its day has finally come. Yeah, fantastic. But it's slow burn, as Alison indicated this morning in a keynote speech. But that's where we're working, and that's where the opportunity fits. So, in terms of my opportunity, I'm a practitioner, although I'm not now, because practitioners think I'm an academic. And I'm not an academic because the academics think I'm a practitioner, so I'm in the middle, and they're both lobbing rocks at me, because I'm not doing it right, but there isn't a right. You learn as you go. But that's it in the no man's land, in the middle, and that's got a name, which I'm quite happy to accept. And the world needs more academics, definitely. So, you need something in which to move a vehicle. Apologies, a mistake on that slide. We need a vehicle. So there's got to be something to sell. People are expecting you not to come at them with concepts and ideas. They need something practical that can work on the ground. So a vehicle was needed. And it needed to be scalable. That's the thing. I work in government. I work beyond the boundaries of the DEFRA group of organisations. Alison gave you a sense of the scale of that. There's no point in doing something that can only be used in one place once. It's got to be something that can be used in many places and many times. And it's got to be sustainable. You know, it's not a flash in the pan thing. It's got to have value that lasts. And it's got to take us, I say us, as clients, the expectations of the senior leaders. It's got to take them somewhere where they want to go, partially. And it's got to take them to places they don't know they want to go yet. Right, so it's got to be grounded. It's got to be practicable, something you can use and apply. And what better way of grounding than in the soil? And I was really drawn to Otto Scharmer's theory U and the way he described these three different phases. But it starts by talking about the social soil. If you don't attend to the social soil, you're only attending to process and activity. You're not actually getting into the soul of the people who are doing the work. And if you're expecting their work, the way they approach work to change, you really do need to get into the soul. So that really appealed to me, and I was inspired to take that three-step process of attention, intention, and agency and use it as the fundamental bedrock for my process, my vehicle. So, I'm not sure if you'll be able to read those at the back, but those are my research propositions. And as you can see, there's one for each: attend, intent, and agency. The first one first one is the ability to deliver missions requires senior leadership to understand what capability they have in order to work to that agenda. The second one, once they're aware of the potential and the complexity capability that they have as an enabler of efficiency and effectiveness, they will seek to build and sustain those capabilities. Sort of logical. And then the third one, it doesn't have to cost anything. Now that's the bait on the hook, really. So that's the world I live in. When you're looking at bringing about changes, you don't have a budget. You just have to go in and work with people and help them to find better ways of working. And that can be done. It doesn't cost very much at all. It's all within the internal budgets I'm paid for. I'm not an external consultant. Same for my colleagues and the wider service that we provide. But it is not about us coming in to help to solve problems for people. We help people to solve problems for themselves, so they learn how to do it themselves. So this PhD is an opportunity to do just that on a bigger scale, more impactfully, potentially. So there's a starting point with this, and I drew it out as a diagram quite early on. It's an as-is diagram. The points are not going to work on the screen, but if you can see it, you've got systems thinking at the top. I'll come back to here, point to it, don't I? Systems thinking, that happens already, even if it's not labelled as such. You have a lot of people who have now been exposed to some form of training in systems leadership. And then you've got systems practice, which is demonstrated by case studies where you can demonstrate how you've applied systems thinking. And then you've got culture having an impact. As is, generalization, culture has a negative effect on the ability to think systemically. And we don't see many case studies. So, that should cause an itch that one did want to scratch. Now this is called the chicken. I didn't label it as such, but I've embraced it because I just can't resist it any longer. This is the chicken diagram. Yeah. And I'm going to contrast it with a 2B, which looks slightly different. You can see there it's exactly the same in its components with the addition of this and these 4 different influences. So the idea is you want to see more case studies. So you want more systems practice. So I've labelled this systemic leadership to differentiate it from systems leadership, but this could be systems policy. This is about an organisation giving permission and an expectation for experimentation using systems practice. Because that's a real obstacle. People they feel they have the opportunities to actually experiment, even though the rhetoric might be you're encouraged to. The reality is you can't. So the policy should make it absolutely clear as an expectation. There's a similar expectation on the leadership. So you've been trained, you have this understanding about what systems leadership is. You have to make it happen. So there's an expectation on you creating the spaces for your people to experiment. And the product, the case study, that is an amplification device. It must focus not on what happened and went well. I should say not only on that. That's what it tends to focus on. It should focus on what didn't work and why, and what lessons have been identified as a consequence, and it should be demonstrable that you have amplified those messages by sharing it widely. So that's very culturally different. You're actually going to say, we didn't get it right. Quite powerful to actually have that as an expectation written in policy. And then finally you've got work on the culture at the top. Saying that culture is big, how can you influence culture? And especially when you're looking at institutions as big as the civil service, how do you change that? Obviously it's not worth starting. Not so. There are lots of ways in which you can change culture, but people are afraid of it. And they need to learn that there are little places that you can find, points of leverage where you can make a small investment which has a disproportionately large impact. So that's what that's about. It's a shifting of the balance point between enablers and disablers for thinking and working systemically. So, this is called the fancy chicken, because it's got a bigger tail. Right, so I would normally take you into great detail, as I presented before, about my vehicle. It's not really about the vehicle, it's about how you interact with people, how you bring them together, how you inspire their curiosity and then start to feed it and help them to help themselves. That's what it's really about. So I'm actually going to go light onto it, but you can see you've got the before stage, you've got what you attend to, which is really important. That leads to decisions, intent from senior leadership, and that leads to these changes that are affordable and eminently doable and have disproportionately large impact if you're lucky enough to find the right places. So, the vehicle. I've highlighted elements that I wanted to draw your attention to in this presentation. If I get into questions you want to know about something else, then do ask. So I'm going to look, it's going to be people positive, it's centered on people, that's the most important part of it. It's a celebration about what these people have already. It is not calling them out saying you don't know about systems, your world's going to be rocked as soon as you learn, you're going to find all you knew before is useless to you, rubbish. So no, it's not like that. You need to celebrate what they bring, because they all bring stuff which is eminently relevant, and even though they might not have labelled it as systems thinking, definitely is. Don't teach people. I'm not out to teach people, but I am out to give them directions and make it easier for finding their own path of learning. Whoops. The personal learning journeys are key. This morning there's been a few mentions of expertise in systems thinking. And there is, Lauren said, there isn't an expert. There are no such thing, but expertise is a relative concept. That's quite important. You never reach that end point when you're going to know everything. The great and the good in the systems world, they don't know everything. They know a lot about parts, but there's far too much for any one person to know. So as soon as you know that, you can relax a little bit, say, well, okay, I'm going to go on my own personal journey, find out what I need to know that's relevant to what I'm doing, and it won't be wrong, but I am going to draw on help from people on their journeys. Maybe they're further ahead, or they have a different experience which is of value to me. So it's all about those relationships between people, developing the relative expertise. And then there's an inquiry process, which is what you need for the senior leaders, because they need to see something. I'm using metaphors and images a lot. I'm not apologising, I've got 11 minutes. I'm not apologising for that. It's part of it. I didn't want to do anything that had been done before. I want to be radically different, but not really bonkers. So, and I wanted to learn by doing, so I tried different things, metaphors, and observed to see if they worked, if they landed well, if they were having the impact I hoped they would have, and they didn't, so I refined them. This is one of my latest ones. So systems thinking, you represented it as a building. What sort of a building would it be? A rotunda. It's round. You can approach it from any direction. Then you've got steps, and you have to climb. Gravity forces you to climb from the bottom to the top. So this is an ideal. You can jump steps if you don't fit, but ideally you go up one step at a time. So you'd focus with mindsets first, methodology second. That's the traditional approach. But this one I encourage people to skip over. So this exists, but as far as your journey is concerned, you don't need to worry about it just yet. Later you will come across the methodologies and they will make more sense to you. And if you're going to learn traditionally, you would have been taught methodologies as part of your foundation. This is different. If you're going to go for other forms of training, you will get that, and it's equally good, but this is different. Just nip over the methodologies so we don't get tripped up on those for the moment. Then you've got knowledge, what you need to know, how you can tell the difference between a problem that can be solved and one that can't be solved, but the outcomes can be improved. Your diagnosis, you need a certain amount of knowledge to be able to tell that difference in order to make a decision on which approach you're going to take. Then the skills, and most of those skills are soft skills, about how you relate to people and how you help people relate to each other. And then finally you get tools, which is where everybody wants to go to first. Show me the toolkit. Where's the toolkit? I want to start with a toolkit. I want to have a play. Dangerous. A colleague gave me a very good metaphor like this. If you're going on a very long trip in your car and it's playing up. So you drive onto the forecourt of the garage and the mechanic's coming out and she's wiping her hands on a rag. And she says, oh, I'm just off to lunch. Oh no, you've got to help me, you've got to help me. My car's playing up, I have to make this journey this afternoon. Can you help? So I'll tell you what I'll do. There are my tools, fill your boots, and leave you to it. That of course doesn't work, does it? It's a very hard way of learning by using tools, and you're more likely to cause more damage than good. So tools last, quite deliberately. And that inspiration came from design thinking, paper by Costa. If you get these slides later, the citations are at the bottom of the slides. So you can apply from any direction. So here we have somebody from organizational development and design. So they help on structuring of organizations. And a lot of psychology in there as well. Here you have somebody, this is a change manager, business change manager, works in the project world. They're both climbing, both welcome. And when they get up into the top, that's where they can talk to each other. They can learn from each other. And this rucksack full of information and knowledge and experience they bring with them is part of what they contribute to this meeting place, this sharing place. So this is about celebrating what they bring with them, making it really explicit. Second metaphor, see, don't teach, guide. So, Mike Jackson's tome, the Bible. You want to know about systems thinking? Perhaps best not start there. There are more accessible publications increasingly becoming available, which is absolutely wonderful. But what I wanted to do was to give people a map that they can navigate using modern technology, virtual whiteboard. So this is the same colour coding as the steps. It's presented in the reverse order. You start in the middle and you work your way out. And a nod to Mike Jackson in the middle with his 5 mindsets. And he linked it to 5 key methodologies. Mike Jackson. Yeah, so and I've covered this with things that I've collected over time, including some drawings. I'm using images to bring all this together so you get some sense of familiarity, which means that you can go into this map somewhere where you're comfortable and then start exploring out. That's the thinking behind it. The two together, I find are working much better than this on its own. This was the first one. And this is the whole of the method, which I'm not going to go through in detail, but it's people positive. Over on this side, this is an organizational part thereof. There are people who are already curious about systems curious, they're in the middle. These are the people that I want to work with. They form a community of practice. I help them to understand what that is and to recognize themselves within it. I also introduce them to the idea of systems convening. So the Wenger trainers is very inspirational in their work in terms of how I'm applying this. And they provide free PDFs to download of the books, which are very accessible, so that's a great help. There's a lot more that's collected in terms of helping to establish this community of practice. But once they're established, they then go into researcher mode. They interview 30 people. There are 30 people that are hand-picked, not randomly picked, and they are 3 levels in the organisation: senior leadership, middle management, and delivery teams. They're interviewed, there's a questionnaire, it gives you some information. That information is analysed. Donald Rumsfeld again, this is the second time he's appeared today. But this is really key and useful. The most important, I think, for the senior leaderships to recognise is there's a lot they don't know. That's going to be really useful to them. So this is a vehicle for helping to draw their attention to what they don't know. And also, there's this opportunity about, which one is it? Unknown knowns?
Red.
Yes. This is where they have capability already, but they don't recognise that they've got it. And because this is working with people, a community within the organisation, it's from the ground up. It's an opportunity to draw their attention to it. So all of that gets analysed against a body of knowledge. This is when Mike's book comes in. No, it's not. No, it's not. No. But the body of knowledge is actually bespoke for the organisation. It's part of the co-creation of working with a small community of practice. We develop it together. So it's stuff that resonates, that's really useful, and no extra padding. And you build out from there. Comparison against that body of knowledge with the data that we get from the interviews produces a profile which is unique, 4 minutes. It goes to the senior leaders, and the senior leaders ask themselves, do we need to do anything? And a key message that you're hopefully conveying in this profile is that you don't know a lot of that. It's really useful, it's really good, but you're not doing very much of that. And that's a problem. That's a shame. You're not being as effective as you could be. All we need is this. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We need both, very clearly. So it's a rebalancing. And to do the rebalancing, you need to look at the cultural elephants in the room and think about how you can minimise their impact and how you can maximise positive influences. Now what you're looking at in the background there is on Kumu, fuzzy logic map that I did early in my PhD, just as a dump of everything in my brain that I thought would influence culture, that people would recognise and be able to associate with. And it was only for me really, just so I could get out of my head and start to think straight. But it's proved really useful because I can have conversations with people about anything on here. And if I use this as a sort of backdrop, it will take me further out, expand their worlds. So this is psychological safety. You've got generative dialogue linked to this, innovation. In a negative way, you've got fear. The more psychological safety you have, less fear you have. Less fear you have, the more generative dialogue you're going to get, the more innovation you're going to get. Lots of these interdependencies have actually been presented. They're becoming visible to people now. And I'm not forcing them for the penny to drop, but it certainly helps. As I mentioned, we want to shift the balance, so we're going to minimise the elephants in the room, label them, that's the first thing, and maximise all the good stuff. And look how much, this is all good stuff that's on that map. There's loads of it, so it's just using it for greater impact. Then agency. So the profile comes with recommendations for change. But at the point of generating the profile, work is already underway. A difference has already been made. A community of practice has been formed. This is a virtual whiteboard mapping the progress of the development of that community, complete with all the assets, knowledge assets that they've contributed and that I've included into the mix to help them. So this is something that you can go back to time and time again. As you can see, it's work in progress. Field trials are underway with the Independent Office for Police Conduct, not in the DEFRA group. Interesting, but I won't go there. Right, just finishing up. The images. Don't teach, guide, engage, don't overwhelm. I use a lot of images. I don't talk very much, or try not to, which is hard for me. But if I present a picture and ask my colleagues in this community what that means to them, and we framed it, we're thinking about pathologies in the organisation, things which aren't good. What does this image represent to you? And they start talking about it in their language, like capturing their language. Fantastic. And then when that's exhausted, I'll go to, and I'm just about to show you another image, but before I do, what's the opposite? What would be a better version of this? A better image. So they start to describe something better, again in their language, and then I will show them my opposite. It's such a great process. I'm not pushing stuff their way, I'm just using pictures to help draw out what they think, help them articulate what's going on in their heads. Also, other ways in which you can engage people. You're looking at PowerPoint. More and more, I use virtual whiteboards. I've drawn up a sort of pathway, and my presentation is literally guiding people around the picture. And then they get the picture, they get the picture, and it's full of hyperlinks and rabbit holes that they can go down and explore on themselves. So it's about helping them to go on their own personal learning journeys. And I think that's it. I am there.